So we've got some folk who are coming in, and I am going to get started. So welcome Anthony and Tima and Elizabeth and Christine. I don't know who else is here, but we're also going to go live. We're going live on Facebook. Well, my name is Melody Smith Johnson. I am an advising partner for the Wise Women Business Center. I do community outreach here in Cuyahoga County. I also am the owner and founder of Melodies, and proud to say that in Harriet Tubman's hometown, co-working and event space here. So happy Women's History Month. Welcome, everyone, to the Power Hour of the Wise Women Business Center. It's the practical HR tips for growing your business. And I'm so excited to be joined by two powerhouse women who I will introduce in a moment. And we are welcoming you to be very active in the chat. Carolyn will be monitoring the chat. Get all of your questions out, everything that you would want to ask someone. Of course, my phone is going off, although I told everybody to leave me alone. Life is lifing. But we're excited for the next 60 minutes to have your attention and to share the wisdom for you to get the wisdom from Caprice and Lindsay. So what we're doing today is inviting you into a conversation. So if you're thinking about hiring in the future or getting your business off the ground, Wise Women Business Center functions to help business owners in 7 counties in Central New York, from the ideation stage all the way out to the scale up stage. And today you're joining 2 of our HR experts for a conversation, though casual, but insightful, about building a strong HR foundation from the start. And that's really important from the start because we've got philosophies about that. So whether you're thinking about hiring contractors or employees, or you just want to prepare for growth, or you're thinking about what that might look like, this is the Power Hour for you. So what I'd like you to do is get on your phone and tell your friends something amazing is happening for the next 55 minutes. They need to jump on this Power Hour and get to have some strategies to help your business. We want you to avoid some common pitfalls that we know business owners encounter, because we want to set up your business for success. So let me introduce our wonderful experts. Let's start with Lindsay. And Lindsay has an amazing last name, but she's given us grace by abbreviating her name to just 5 letters. Lindsay Mastro. She is a conscious, serious entrepreneur. This is what she describes herself as, and I love it. So she's also a published author, which is really cool. She's a CEO who grew tired of seeing creatives and caring leaders struggle in the corporate environment and in the business ownership, right? So she's got nearly 20 years of experience in HR and business development. So what does Lindsay bring to this conversation? She brings strategy. She brings practicality, like common sense isn't a fruit that grows in every garden. So she brings practicality. She brings energy to help mission-led businesses scale. And she's the founder and the leader and the CEO of ConsciousHR. So what she does is she aligns people's strategy with business goals, and she offers custom HR solutions that fosters accountability and balance purpose with profit. I love that. And so she's the founder of, I'm going to say, Disrupt State.
You got it.
Which is so cool. So what she's doing is she's shaking up the HR industry through impactful networking and disruptive HR events in Central New York and Northern Country, New York. So welcome, Lindsay. Welcome.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
I want to also introduce Caprice Reader, who's on my screen. She's the top right. I don't know where she is on yours, but Caprice is the founder and the owner of Reader HR Consulting. She has over 15 years of progressive HR experience. She's worked with HR leadership positions, and she's become an HR consultant in 2016. She focuses her practice on assisting small to medium-sized employers create thriving workplaces by partnering with employers to ensure compliance and building strong workplace cultures. So we talked about, between myself, Caprice, And Lindsay, we've got, like, we're senior citizens in HR. We've got about 65 years of experience in this call. So I want to invite you, Christine, you, Anthony, you, Tima, you, Elizabeth, and you, Quasia, to get active, get your questions out. Make sure that as I go through the topics that have been assigned to increase the conversation and the flow, that you begin to ask your questions, and we'll make sure we'll get those started. So just to get this thing off and popping, Lindsay and Caprice, why don't we get started with Lindsay? What is important for you to share off the top with small businesses about your philosophy concerning human resources?
Sure. Oh my gosh, I feel like I could spend the next hour talking about this. But I think my biggest takeaway and really where my passion lies with small business is that small business owners, leaders, founders, they're just humans in our communities. And the impact that small business has on our communities is just the most impactful thing that we actually have the ability to impact on a day-to-day basis. You don't necessarily get that close to that type of an impact when you are working in these large corporations or
Mm-hmm.
nationwide companies. So my experience working with small business owners has been amazing because you can see the immediate impact to the communities. So having the practical HR stuff and the knowledge, like we always say, you don't know what you don't know. You
Right.
need to know those things, but it doesn't just stop at the paperwork. It extends to the humans, just not
Mm-hmm.
that are working for you, but you as an owner, as a founder who are running that company. There's leadership skills you need, there's strategy you need, and all of that just gets tied to those practical outcomes.
Right.
So that's where we lead with everything is marrying both the practical and the strategic and really leaning into community and the immense impact that you as a business owner really do have, not just on your people, but on your entire city, village, town, wherever you're at.
Right. You're closer to the fingertips that touch the community, right? I love that. And so, Caprice, we've talked about that as well in our conversations previously. And so when you're engaging these business owners, I'm sure that there's some misconceptions about what HR, really would be, as you encounter these business owners, and doing what Lindsay is saying, giving them the opportunity to learn how to use HR resources to better impact their communities. What would be some of those misconceptions that you've encountered with HR?
So I've been working with small businesses pretty much my whole career.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of those misconceptions that I come across is that anybody can take on those HR duties. So a lot of times, I'll come in and I'll ask, who's doing HR and who's responsible for that? Oh, we have, our controller that's doing HR, but the controller's never had responsibility for doing HR. Or, oh, this is, our office manager and our office manager is taking that on, but they've never had any experience doing that. Or other misconceptions are that HR is just about, the admin work, it's paperwork, and, they don't think about, yes, there are going to be those tactical responsibilities in HR. So they do need somebody that, employees can go to when they have a question about, paid leaves, or they have a question, about certain policies that they have in place. But it's also those strategic things, because we have to
Mm-hmm.
remember that when you're hiring employees, it's the entire life cycle of the employee. You're going
Right.
to hire an employee, you're also going to want to retain that employee. So it's all about your employer brand. So you want to make sure that you have a good HR team coming from your leadership down, so that your employer brand is out there. You're hiring the right people. They want to come work for you. Your benefits are in place. So you have, those attractive benefits to bring top talent in. You're making sure that your compensation is competitive. You're making sure that you're following those compliance laws. You're making sure that you're training and developing those employees. You have career pathing. There's so many different things that you want to make sure that you're providing to people. Otherwise, it's just a job. People are coming in, they're working their 9 to 5, they're going home, and then they might leave and say, oh, I'm going to make $1 more an hour over here. Why wouldn't I just go work over here? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different things. And so when I'm going in and I'm, working with a new client, I like to do an HR assessment to see where you are and where we might be able to help you improve. So again, it's going to be just what Lindsay said. We want to marry those two things together and take those tactical type of things. And yes, we are going to need somebody that's going to, maintain that day-to-day function, but we also want to build out a strategic plan so we
Mhm.
can help you attract and retain people. We can help you with your branding because you're going to spend all this money branding things so that you can sell your product. Why aren't you going to sell yourselves to your employees? So that's what, a good consultant is going to do for your organization. Why spend all this
Absolutely.
money to bring somebody in, train them, and then have them leave in 6 months and then do it all over again?
Absolutely. So when is it that you think a business owner should be thinking about HR strategy?
From the
Lindsay.
very
I
beginning.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
just gonna add on to what Caprice had said,
Yeah.
that on the misconception piece, I think in small business there is this misconception that the strategy isn't needed. And
Right.
the all of those tactical things I say all the time, like a handbook. It's the number one thing that people come to HR people for, right? Like, oh, I need a handbook. I say all the time, the policy is only worth the paper it's written on.
Say that again.
The policy is only worth the paper that it's written
That's
on.
right.
Like it's useless unless you're actually like doing the thing that's written down and you're doing it consistently and it feeds into some larger
Right.
purpose. There's
Right.
no reason to have that policy. There are, particular ones that are required, but I'm never going to tell my client, like, you absolutely have to do this. And by the way, there's like no reason that it needs to be in here, or listen, there is no reason this needs to be in here, but this is why it's important and this is where it feeds into this larger picture. So I think a lot of small business owners are like, I need this because they're telling me I need to, but they do serve these larger purposes if you have
Mhm.
that foundation that Caprice was just talking about
Right.
available.
So I also do say that as well. Like when I review a handbook, as part of the assessment, I'll say, do you actually follow these things? Or do you
Hmm.
know what's in the handbook? Because if you
Mhm.
don't, then we should just take it
Yeah,
out.
get
Like
rid
it's
of it.
there's no point in having this just
Mhm.
to have it. Because if you're
Hmm.
not following it, that's gonna bite you in the butt later on when you try to, enforce things or, an employee is gonna look at that and be like, oh, like I saw this here.
Hmm.
Or maybe they don't even know it's in their handbook, or if there's contradicting statements or, things in there. You are not required by law to have a handbook. It's a great idea to put all of those things you need to have in there by law or best practices. But if you're not following it, why would you even have it?
Yeah.
Agreed. Put a
And
pin in the not required by law because I want to make sure we go back to that because
Okay.
that's very interesting. People don't even know that. That is not a required document for your business. So
Yeah.
HR, is a huge field, right? There's so many things that so many subtopics. And it's hard when you're starting a business to really wrap your head around where do I start to bring HR into my business world. We're already said you should be, if you're starting a business and you have an employee population of one, the business owner, you should be thinking about HR, right?
mhm.
So define for us maybe one or two small first steps that a small business could really take to start thinking about HR and then bridge the gap between the thinking to the doing.
I don't start working with any client, even with one employee, until we've sat down and we've talked about your mission, your vision, and your values.
Love that.
So there's, why would I jump in with a policy? Why would I jump in with a job description? That job description is never going to be tied to who you truly want sitting in that seat unless you know that they're going to be tied to that same mission, vision, and values that you are so married to because this
Right.
business is your baby.
We're
So
talking about the why of what you're doing.
yes, a thousand
Absolutely.
percent. And that really does tie back to employer branding. That
Mhm.
who are you as an employer? Who do you want your people to be? And you want them to be the best version of you, and that you want them to fill the things that you cannot fulfill, whether it's in time, whether it's in skill. You find the gaps, and then you find people that are on that same path with you that believe in what you do. That's how you create retention. And a good consultant is going to sit down and tell you why that retention immediately impacts your bottom line. It's all of this unrealized revenue that you don't know you're missing out on. And that's why HR is such a hard thing. And there has so many of these misconceptions because we're talking about something that's invisible, but it makes a huge, huge difference when you're actually bought in and when you are starting at that very foundation of the why.
I love it. Caprice, did you want to add anything to that?
I agree with that when she was saying the mission, vision, and values. You can't start working with someone or even bring somebody in-house to work on your HR unless they understand what you're all about and why you're there and what your goals are. So I start working on looking at your mission, vision, and values, or if they don't have them, there are a lot of small businesses that haven't defined those yet.
Yeah,
Talking about what are your goals, HR has to align with and know, all of the departments. It's not just siloed in the HR department. So I will go in and say, what is your business strategy? If they don't have an HR strategy, they may not even know that's a thing.
Yeah, right.
And going in there and say, okay, we want to
Mhm.
build like the next 6 months out for an HR strategic plan. What's your business strategy? So they may
Right.
have a business strategy in the next, 6 months or a year, and it's, mostly built out on sales and
Mhm.
marketing and all of these other things. Well, how do we build that in an HR strategy? What do we need to do that? And build
Mhm.
that along with it, and who do we need and how do we need to build that in with the HR strategy, and always telling them that HR needs to have a seat at the table and why.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So if a business owner says, listen, okay, I think I can wrap my head around getting a handbook. I think I can wrap my head around getting job descriptions. I even think I can wrap my head around getting someone to do an assessment of my mission, vision, and values. What are the key policies that I need to have to make sure I'm not going to get in trouble? Like roll
Mhm.
off maybe 3 or 4.
Sexual harassment is a big one in New York. That's the number one. Your EEOC statement, your code of conduct is a big one. That's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily required, but it is in my eyes. Like it's the
I
only
think
thing
those are
that's
the
going to
best
help you.
practices ones that I put
Yeah.
in. I always
Right.
do like employment at will,
Hmm.
your fair treatment policies. When I put those in there, I've been doing like presentations on handbooks when people ask me to do them, and talking about like it's not required to have a handbook, but you need all these policies. Where are you going to put them? Um,
Right.
and your fair treatment policies, I agree. Code of conduct, and sometimes we put in ethics in there, like
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
common sense is not so common. One
Whistleblower.
Yep, whistleblower, because that is required now to at least have the posting and putting that in there. One thing that I learned from a very close attorney that I work with at Bonchonic and King is you don't always have to have a policy to discipline somebody for something. So you don't need to make your handbook this giant long handbook. It's just, I have handbooks that are long because I have companies that need all of these different policies. Maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
regulatory policy or all of these different things, but making sure you have those core policies in there. Sometimes people want to put what their corrective discipline policy is in there. And sometimes maybe you need to do that if it's something where you have, people. Lindsay and I can give 1,000 different stories where people are doing things. You're like, why would you do that? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
well,
And
I didn't
and
know
it's
I
usually
couldn't
because
do it.
they're like,
I
oh, I
didn't
thought
know
I
I
had.
couldn't punch in from home and punch out when I have a
Right.
job that I'm, cleaning offices at a site, like, things like that, and be like, okay, we got to have a policy for that. But
Mm-hmm.
it
It's
kind of is kind of,
industry, it's industry specific too.
yeah,
And a lot of times with my clients, they find out that they need a policy that they wouldn't have ever thought of. Like if they have
Right.
drivers, for example, and
Right.
insurance companies, in order to get that level of insurance, require that you have some type of a, you know, equipment use policy or a licensing policy. So a lot of these things are just kind of handed down to you as a mandate. But so you do them because you're told you have to do them, but you don't understand the ultimate reason why. And as long as your consultant or the person that you're partnering with is able to give you the why, it still gives you the idea of why it's actually important. And that's a big gap in our industry in general, is there's not enough people talking about the why. There's just a whole lot of like, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And that's why people think HR is the people police. Like, well, give us the why. Tell us why it's important at the end of the day, and then we can put in our own, risk aversion into that need.
There's also a lot of grants out there, and those require different policies. So if you get federal grants, you need to have certain policies for that. If there's drug-free workplace policies, if you have federal grants that require you to have these specific policies. So when I go in, I ask a lot of different questions, and then I will always explain to them why you need to have these certain policies in order to comply with certain grants. And there's certain trainings that you need with certain grants. Like in New York State, you are required to have certain trainings for certain grants. And I help my clients, review those grants and, look at those different things. So there are different consultants that look at different things and help them work through different items. And it's really just, again, industry specific, and looking at those items and kind of seeing that's all part of the HR assessment, is just seeing, what you're doing well and what we can help you to do better with.
Right. To get to a foundational place, right?
Yeah.
To build a strong foundation, because as a small business owner, this is your baby. You've poured time, talents, and treasure into this thing, whatever this thing is, and you really want it to be successful. So, Lindsay, Caprice, you mentioned something, a pretty strong word that HR is really important for, and that word is compliance.
Yep.
Right. And I think compliance can be scary for a small business. We're not talking about taxes yet. We're not talking about, all of those things, but just compliance from the standpoint, you want to make sure, and we always want to make sure that the business that we're in the business of running a good business and engaging our staff and our contractors in a way that is with integrity, right? And we're not putting our business at risk. And so therefore we have compliance. What are some really basic, right? We only got an hour. I think we got 40 minutes now.
Oh, I could talk about compliance for days upon days.
So that's why I said
I will be very quick.
This is the time we got today. Just give me two, each of you. Compliance, legal requirements for small businesses concerning compliance.
Oh, geez. I'm going to try to, the first one that comes up all the time are going to be leaves. Those are going to be so important because there's so many different types of leave. And then if you do happen to, we're in a remote workforce environment, thinking about state specific leaves and how they intertwine and interact with each other. It's very important to look at those and look at the regulations and reach out to somebody if you don't know what to do in those situations, and work with somebody on that, because that is something that you don't want to, mess up.
Right.
You just don't. And if you don't know something about it, and you may not even know that somebody needs a leave or an accommodation, it can be very difficult, and you don't ever want to terminate somebody. You don't ever want to, not provide that accommodation or that leave or whatever they might need. You might not even know you need to provide the paperwork. It just gets so sticky, especially when they've just added in New York prenatal leave at the beginning of the year. So now you have to provide this extra stuff. There's sick leave, what's protected leave. So that's just one of the things that every day I get a question on that and what we should do.
I want to add, in my HR practice, I'm always saying confirm, even if your payroll company, whichever one you use, always confirm with someone else. Would you agree?
I would say don't even go to your payroll company.
Yeah.
But I mean,
You probably aren't going to get the best
Benefit
answer.
of the
No.
doubt today. We're giving mercy and grace today.
Okay, but yes, I would, yes, confirm, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I would definitely reach out to, somebody who specializes in those and can
Yeah.
provide that
I think
guidance and information.
HR compliance is completely separate from payroll and
Yes,
tax compliance. And if you can leave with anything today, know that that isn't it,
Right.
that there is an entirely other body of compliance. And it's the trouble with that big word is it is scary and there's completely different things to be concerned about. So yes, like
we're not beating up on the payroll companies. Everybody
No, we are
needs to
not.
pay,
No,
right?
no.
We want to make sure taxes are paid and all that. But I think we need to understand as a body of leaders is that you need to make sure that you understand how to handle the work life of your employees.
Yes.
And it's not anchored in payroll, it's anchored in compliance.
Yeah.
That's driven by state, federal, and often even county law.
Yep.
Driven.
So
We need
I
to have the
don't
expert.
say I'm an expert at all in payroll tax and compliance, but I'm very savvy because I focus my practice a lot on the compliance pieces of it. I've just done that for a long time. That's what I did previous to starting my company, was focusing a lot on compliance, focusing a lot on investigations, doing FLSA audits, a lot of those different things. So I didn't focus a lot in like payroll. I do payroll audits, but I leave that stuff to the payroll companies because they have payroll compliance and tax specialists.
Yeah.
And we are the ones that are doing like the HR compliance and doing, the things and keeping up to date with those types of things and employee engagement and what are the trends and best practices. So if you have an HR question, I think would be best to come to someone who is, keeping up to date with those things and continually learning, because that is a part of our practice as we are doing professional development. We are going to, different trainings and reading and doing all of these things. And we do have, constant contact. I partner with an employment law attorney. So we have that knowledge and information. I think another piece as far as compliance would be, wage and hour. That is a huge, huge issue right now.
Absolutely.
And one of the pieces is making sure that you're paying people properly. And there's so many components of it, not only minimum wage and overtime, making sure you're classifying people correctly, making sure you're paying them. If you have manual laborers, you have to pay them on a weekly basis.
That's a big one people do not know.
So Caprice, you
huge.
just said
It's
something.
huge.
So when you say classify, define for our audience when you say classify.
So you can classify employees many different ways. It could be an hourly non-exempt. It can be a salary exempt or salary non-exempt. And some people say, okay, you're going to be a salary exempt employee. And they say, okay, just because you're doing an office job. There are salary requirements, minimum salary requirements in New York State, in each state, federally. And then there are also duty requirements as well. And you have to make sure under each classification that that individual meets those duty requirements and the salary requirements. And I do FLSA audits as part of our HR assessment to take a look at those. And oftentimes, and it's not anything malicious on an employer, it's just not knowing that somebody cannot qualify as a salary position as an administrative assistant if their duties don't meet it. It has nothing to do with the title. I've seen many times where someone's like, oh, well, you're the HR director, but you're really not the HR director. You are, doing the office, you're doing the accounts payable, you're doing all these things that, don't meet the requirements of being a salaried position. And so oftentimes they don't even meet the minimum salary requirements to be that. And there's a lot of different things that go into that. And New York State hired, I don't know how many, but at least 100 wage and hour investigators a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was try to catch people, but just to do more due diligence in looking into these wage and hour issues. And they are going into, I had one client that they just went into, it's random audits, a small restaurant, probably
if you have a storefront, that's who they were targeting. If you have a storefront.
Storefronts, they were looking at warehouse employees. I had one go into, there there was warehouse, restaurant. Can't remember what the one that they went into, because I had another one that was a previous client that she called me and said they went into. I don't remember what it was, but it was
Mhm.
something like that, storefront, because they are looking for, just, and honestly, it's not
Yep.
people deliberately doing it. It's just, not
Just
knowing.
no, right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think you said a key thing there too, is the the like intention behind it. I think from the public perspective, we get this narrative of like, oh, these companies are screwing over their
Yeah.
employees.
Mhm.
And in small business, like, well, I'll
Yep.
say that's my experience, 99.9% of small business owners are just trying to do the thing they know
Right.
how to do, or the
Right.
thing that they are passionate about. And maybe they're not the best leaders, but it doesn't mean that they're horrible people, but they
That's right.
recognize that they need help being a better leader. And again, they don't know what they don't know. They
Right.
don't know that you can't just pay somebody salary. And so many times they're doing it as a favor to the employee,
Yep.
because the employee would rather be paid that way.
Right.
Well, New
I
Right.
York State and their 100 auditors don't care about your intention.
That's right.
They
I
care about the fine and the penalty they're going to
I
be able to get
agree,
from you.
because that's what,
Mhm.
the audit, I had a client that said the same thing. Well, don't I get a pass for like just not knowing? And I'm
Just being
like,
a good person. Yeah.
No,
I
ma'am.
tried
No,
to do
ma'am.
it. She wanted that. I was like,
No, that no one's interested in your inability to understand and interpret the law.
they're like, but
Which
she
is
doesn't work here anymore, but we're still friends. I'm like, the
mhm.
auditors do
And
not care.
No,
It's
not at
why
all.
it's why us HR people preach about documentation, because at the end of the day, I
Right.
tell everybody, if you were to be having this conversation in a court of law, what
Mhm.
would you need to be able to prove that this is the reason you did it? Because I know that you're not being
Mhm.
malicious. Your
Right.
employee probably knows that you're not being malicious. You know that, but does this judge,
Right.
this, like in the sky judge, know?
And
That's why
Lindsay,
you need to
that's a
document
really
things.
good point. That's a really good point because oftentimes there's a conversation between a judge who's about to rule on an issue, right? What have you communicated to your staff? What
Hmm.
have you said is your policy that your
Yeah.
staff understands? And if you have a handbook, guess what? You can stand on this is what I've communicated.
Hmm.
And my staff has said that they are going to
And
read the handbook, right?
And
They've
also,
signatured.
if you
They've
have a signed handbook, but then you have emails that contradict what's in the handbook, then that handbook's no
exactly.
good,
So
is
there
it?
needs to be
Yep.
consistency across the
Yeah,
board. Oh gosh, I'm
yeah,
loving this conversation. So
yeah.
um, so I think there could be some over feelings of being overwhelmed, right? When we're talking about compliance, we're talking
Hmm.
about communicating. Now we're talking about getting into court, having
Yeah.
someone with a gavel who has the ability to pull down this business that you've
Hmm.
spent all this life blood working with. So, what
It
are
gets
some of the
really scary.
ways that you think a small business owner, right? What is a way that they can stay updated without feeling overwhelmed?
I'll definitely hire somebody who specializes in this. We would love to serve you. And you don't, I think the other key thing to realize is you don't need to know absolutely everything. And the good news is New York tells you almost nothing, but you need to be partnered with somebody who can kind of filter that out for you to tell you
Right,
the things that are really important for
right,
your industry, for the size, for where you're located, whether you're remote or in person. There's a whole lot of different kind of pieces of information that funnel down into what's actually important to you. So just partnering with somebody who already knows those things is going to be a giant load off your mind. And
mhm,
the not knowing for a lot of my clients is the biggest burden, because they want to do the right thing and they don't
right,
know how. So they need it funneled down, first of all, and they need it in their language. Like, business owners are not HR people. They're not HR professionals who have been doing this a very long time, and they don't know how to translate. And then if you go to an attorney, of course, your price is going to be a lot higher for something you maybe don't need legal counsel for, and it's going to be a lot of legalese. So
right,
you want to work with somebody that's also speaking your language, that understands the industry you're in, who understands the demographics of the place that you're physically working in, because your employees are going to have different kind of personas and experiences and understandings. And a lot of times you're going to have familial relationships that we're dealing with. So you don't want to come to a person or have to make a decision about something, or you can't Google, how do I fire my dad's wife, who's part owner in the company because she pissed me off yesterday. Like, there's very specific things that happen in small business that have everything to do with relationships, with optics, the kind of public reputation that you have as a small business owner. There's a whole lot of considerations that come into play that are really, really difficult to navigate. And you can see why these situations, why the compliance is just the very base level of concern. And it's probably, honestly, like the least of your concern. If you can navigate more of the optic things and the consistency and the documentation, the rest of the compliance things, as long as you know what you have to do, they're just going to happen. And they're much less of a deal than you think they are. And unfortunately, because it is so scary, it's often what you're sold on. And that's my problem with our entire industry, is like, don't make it scary. Tell people what they need to know, and then start working on the things that actually matter.
I love that. So we're building this amazing foundation, right, on a shared understanding that we can sort of crack away at what's needed, right, to build our small business on an understanding of compliance. There's some things that have to happen, 4 or 5 things that we must have in place, communicated to our staff. Now let's get some staff, right? And that's all about recruiting that many of us don't like to do. This might be one of the least favorite things to do, although necessary, right? How else are we going to get staff?
And there's a reason that there's recruiting consultants that don't do the rest of the work.
I didn't hear you say it again.
Yeah,
I said there's a reason that there's recruiting agencies that just do recruiting. Yeah.
Absolutely. So each of our folk who are on, and anyone who sees the replay is thinking, oh my God, I need to get staff, and how do I actually do that, and what's necessary to make sure that my hiring practice is, one, within budget, is going to feed into my mission, vision, and values of my organization. What are some of the tips that you would give to someone looking at this process? Let's start with you.
I can answer. Like, some things that I've done is, it doesn't take a lot of money. I mean, you can, if you have like higher positions, to do that, but you don't have to have sponsored ads or spend a lot of money on recruiters or doing those things. Again, it's going to go back to building like your employer brand, and then building those things within your employees so they're referring people. Building an employee referral program is one of the best ways. So if you think about it, as a candidate, some of the best ways for you to get a position is to be referred in, and networking and doing those types of things. It's a lot of times people are getting jobs not by posted ads, it's by being referred by somebody or networking with somebody. So I would definitely recommend having an employee referral program, having those employees refer friends and contacts, making sure that you're building an employer brand where people want to come and work there. And then another way is, building out your community support so that other organizations, like your Chamber of Commerce's, other places, want to refer employees to come work there. And then you're not just looking for these passive candidates that are applying like via Indeed or LinkedIn or things like that, that you're being, known in the community. So those are a couple ways that I've helped organizations to, improve their, recruitment,
Absolutely,
by doing those couple.
You're talking about relationship building, which is really important. Yeah. Lindsay, thank you, Caprice.
I would say, from, again, more of like the practical, like step-by-step end of things. The first thing is definitely that mission, vision, value, the employer brand. So you know what you're actually putting out there. As far as what it's going to cost you, that's the scariest jump when you're going to hire people. you want to go beyond what you think the range is to pay them. First, find out what the range is. We do salary benchmarking for our clients too, so we can tell you exactly in your area what you can expect to pay somebody at certain levels. So beyond that, you're going to have your short-term disability that you're required to offer in New York State. You're going to have workers' comp premiums. Think about your time that it's going to take to manage this employee. So you want to put some type of a monetary figure together so that you understand what the true cost per hour is for these employees, so that you're not shocked when you do onboard somebody and all of a sudden it's way more than just the wages. So as long as you go in with that understanding in the beginning with a true cost figure, it's less of a shock. And I think that's the number one deterrent that I hear from people, like, oh, I can't hire anybody because I don't want to pay for benefits. You're only required to have that short-term disability, the paid family leave, and the workers' comp as a base. You're not required to have health insurance, nor do you even need it if your employees don't want it. So the cost doesn't have to be insane, but you have to know what it is in addition to the wages. And then this is where payroll companies truly shine as far as onboarding is concerned. They're the ones who can implement a program that you're automatically collecting the I-9 information. They're going to set something up where you collect W-4 information for federal taxes, and then they'll have a state tax entrance as well. So as you're working with your payroll company, see what they can do automatically through their system, or if you need to be using a physical paper form to do it. But that's the type of like payroll and tax compliance that they really are helpful with, so that you're not burdened or worried like, oh my God, what forms do I need? And the more you can automate, the better. A lot of people think, oh, I'm just one person. I just have 5 people. I just have 6 people. If you have one person and you can automate it, do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one thing that somebody else is taking care of for you that's not incredibly expensive. There's a lot of really local, amazing payroll companies.
Yep.
We partner with one who's fantastic because they understand the value of small business as well. It doesn't have to be one of these giant companies that doesn't quite understand your industry. So there's a lot of options, and it is available to you. And again, another misconception is like, oh, I'm just a tiny little business, I can't hire anybody, or I'm going to pay them under the table, or
Oh,
I'll put them on as 1099 so I don't have to
That's a
deal with
dirty
it.
word, Lindsay. That's a dirty word under the
Oh,
table.
well,
My
it's
God.
restaurants and hospitality, baby. That's my life. That's where I come from.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
and don't hire them as 1099 because you think it's going to save you, because it's going to end up costing you a lot more in the the audits down the road.
Oh
So
my, yeah.
right way. And I promise you it's not going to cost you as much as long as you know what you're in for. As long as you can make that calculation, it's a lot easier to understand and stomach, and you build it into your sales plan. That's the difference.
Absolutely. Caprice, looked like you were chopping at the bit. What did you want to add?
Well, I was just laughing about the under the table, and I want to say for the 1099s, it is very difficult in New York State to hire an independent contractor. So if you're even thinking about hiring someone as an independent contractor, make sure that you reach out to somebody, reach out to a consultant, reach out to an attorney, looking at that, because it is very unlikely that that person you want to hire is going to be an independent contractor.
That's right.
And for the record, I disagree with a lot of those requirements, but it's true.
It's really important, because what you're going to pay on the back end of that is not even worth. It's not even.
It's something that's not common sense and is not logical for the number of things in New York State that are required to happen. But this is one of those things that just has to be, and it will cost you so much more on the back end. Like, just do it the right way.
So we come to the place where we figured out, okay, this company is going to handle my payroll. I really think I'm ready to hire some folk. There's this process that I've been in HR 30 plus years, and onboarding has always been, in my mind, the opportunity to really engage. So win-win opportunity, right? To say, I found this amazing person that fits with the mission, vision, and values of my company and my business. Let's come together and make magic, right? But oftentimes that onboarding experience has been labor intensive with paper. Employers have not been prepared to receive that person. And what is it? The deer in the headlights look. Oh my God. Like, we need to get away from that, right? We want to make sure that we're engaging our employees in a way that says to them, we are ready for you as small business owners. We've done the work ahead of time, and now we can welcome you. So what are some, one or two essential, what's the impact for you of a great onboarding experience?
I think for me, I would look for something that is structured and engaging. So when somebody, before they even start
Yes.
reaching out to that employee, welcoming them, preparing them, where they're going to be, who they're going to meet with, providing them with, an email of what their agenda is going to be so they know what to expect on their first day. Because, when you're starting a new job, you have no idea what the first day is going to be like. So saying this is what we're going to be doing the first day, you're going to meet with X, Y, and Z at this time. This is what you're going to do. You're going to have lunch with whoever, whatever that's going to look like. So at least it makes their first day less nerve-wracking.
Right.
And it makes them feel like, okay, they're ready for me to start. I don't just
Absolutely.
walk in at 8 o'clock and they're like, oh, you're here. Great. Like, let me see who's available for you.
And
So
how many times have we heard that? Like, oh my God, let's see who's available for you. That's unacceptable.
yep, absolutely. So it's structured and prepared with
I
all
love
the
it.
managers, with whoever. And I think the other piece of it is, depending on the role, making sure that that person has a mentor or a buddy or whoever, depending on where it is, that they have a contact that through their onboarding and their training, it's not just 1 day onboarding or, a 1 week onboarding, that they have somebody that's going to be like their mentor or contact throughout their entire, training or introductory period.
Because
And make sure
questions
that
will
that
continue to
mentor
come as you engage in your business, right?
Mhm.
and make sure that mentor is an employee that you want to duplicate. I
Yeah,
think too many times there's, oh, this person's available to you,
yeah,
That's
but
good,
that
Lindsay.
person is
Good.
under performance issues or is halfway out the door anyway because they're not engaged. Now you're
yep,
just going to recreate that in your brand new person.
Mhm.
So,
yeah,
Mhm.
and if we're talking, very small micro business where you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 people, maybe you're the mentor. So
mhm,
Right.
remember that too, like put that into your schedule, knowing that that's going to be your priority for a little bit of time. And yeah, like Caprice said, just the first day, give them an idea of what is reality. And this all starts again with employer branding. Like, what is your culture? If you're talking about that when you're putting up your posting, when you're doing your
Right.
interviews, they're not going to be shocked when they show up the first day and you say, hey,
Right.
by the way, you're just shadowing all day. As long as you tell them that that is the culture, like we're hot and fast, you got to come in, you got to learn. Like, honestly,
Mhm.
I do care what your culture is. Like, I'm not going to be that facetious about it, but it can be at any level. It doesn't have to be this like super high touch, one-on-one personal experience. It just
Mhm.
has to be transparent and it has
Right.
to be realistic. And as long as you're pulling in the people that understand that and can work within that and vibe with that, they're going to work for you and they're going to work for you for a while.
I
So it's
agree.
just whatever your thing is, be transparent, have it available to them, tell them what they're up to, not just
Mhm.
for the first day, for the first week, for the first 2 weeks, for the first month, even up to 3 months sometimes on like a longer training plan. But
Mhm.
onboarding and training spans, like Capri said, before you even put up a posting, and it
That's
yeah,
right.
stretches all the way into their, 90 plus days.
That's right. I would agree 1,000%. So I know that we want to leave time. We've got about 11 minutes. Um, Folks, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as well. But I do want to leave time if anyone wants to come off of mute and ask our experts questions. But I want to move on into something I think that Lindsay, you were talking about, and Caprice as well, right? Training and onboarding. Onboarding does happen end at some point, right? You expect this employee to have absorbed the training that you've put in place, whether it's making pizzas, whether it's selling cars, whatever your business is, making jewelry, whatever it is, right? At some point, they are then going to be the employee that at some point will be the mentor, right? Will be the ambassador for you. How do you determine which employee that is, which employee it is that you want to make the face to your new employees? So now we're talking about evaluating our employees. performance evaluations, having an opportunity to engage them in understanding their value in the matrix of your business. What are some best practices that our small business owners can employ immediately to be able to effectively evaluate their employees' performance?
We have something that we call flash feedback. We're talking about performance all this month, so it's very top of mind. There, instead of thinking about performance as this like once a year thing that you look at, implement it into your regular one-on-one conversations. And if you don't have one-on-one conversations, you need to be having them.
Absolutely.
And shorten that appraisal. Make it way shorter. Make it 4 questions. Do it once a month. Do it once every 3 months. But if you're doing it once every 3 months, those 4 easy questions in your one-on-ones, make sure you're touching on goals, how they're doing, what they can improve on, how they're doing fantastic. Hit on the great, hit on the okay, hit on the not so good in every conversation you're having. And then just a quick note to yourself, like it does not have to be this big giant appraisal. Who is going to remember once a year what happened? So I can't remember what happened 2 weeks ago. So notes to yourself, notes to your employee, emails back and forth, even if it's a text, which I'm still like, ugh, but just some way to document like or summarize a conversation you have will give you your own documentation of like, oh, what did we talk about? What did happen? How are they doing? And beyond the documentation piece of it, I say number one thing that you can look for in leadership skills, if we're looking at somebody to potentially be a mentor, is curiosity. It's curiosity and it's authenticity and it's that need and the want to be a part of the why. If you have those skills or if you have those mindsets in people, the skills can be taught. It's the mindset and it's the want and it's the drive that's going to be a person that is going to be most like you because you're a business owner. You have a mindset and a want and a drive, otherwise you would not be a business owner. So you want to emulate the best parts of you in those other people, and you have to figure out the things that you can teach and the things you cannot teach. So look for those mindset type things in people before you start thinking about putting them in charge because they happen to be really good at doing the thing. There's a lot of people that are amazing at doing the thing. Doesn't mean they're a great leader, doesn't mean they're a great mentor, and that's fine. And do they want to? That's the other big thing. Like,
I love
it
that.
can be great, but they might not want
Caprice,
to.
what value does documenting performance have when we're talking about compliance?
It's everything.
Yeah.
Literally everything. If you don't document it, it never happened.
Absolutely.
Like that is what I teach and tell every client, everyone I talk to. If you don't have a record of it, how can you prove that you did something? So when you're documenting the good things, you're documenting, when you have a conversation with someone, it doesn't even necessarily need to be you're writing somebody up. It's just you had a performance conversation with somebody because, they were late or they were learning their job and you corrected something that they're doing. It doesn't need to be a formal documentation. You can do something. And some of the things I do when I'm telling clients, I will say, well, why don't you, if you don't have a formal HR department, whoever's responsible for that, or if you're responsible, you can even write up something in an email and send it to whoever's responsible for that HR function, or send it to yourself because that's a great way to document the date and the time. An email will have that in it because everyone's like, oh, we're so busy. And I completely understand being a small business owner, you don't have time for things. Well, you document in there, it's the name, write down, who he had the conversation with. Was anybody there with you? And write down just a synopsis of what that conversation was, email it, and then when you have time, you can file it. And I think that's a really great way to do that. And then you're documenting that. And then when you have the more serious conversations, or you have, praise conversations, or I'm a proponent of doing monthly check-ins where you have very, 4 questions is great. We do 4 or 5 questions and you sit down and you talk to someone and you say, here's some things you're really doing really great. Here's some things you can work on. And then you end with, something great, like here's your goals and here's what we're working on. And what do you want to work on in the future? And then document that and put that in their file as well. And that can also be, done electronically. But you know, you're always going to need that when you're looking back to say, okay, do I want this person to be a mentor? We have a promotion that's coming up. Somebody applied for that. Is this person going to be a good candidate? Let's look back at the last year and what conversations did we have? Sometimes
Right.
I'll go in and I'll do like an assessment. I'll open up someone's file and there's like one thing in it or nothing. I love the ones where I open, I'm like, oh, there's nothing in here. Like, all right, they've been here for 3 years. We have nothing. So, you
They
know,
don't exist. Yeah.
just trying to get just some sort of documentation. And
Mhm.
I try to make it as easy as possible because I know everybody's busy.
Yeah, for sure. Small businesses are in the business of running business, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
trying to keep it going.
Yep.
We're coming close to the end, but there is something I think that's really important for all of our small businesses, either they're here now or seeing it in the replay, to know where they can get tools, right? Where can we get our hands on all of these tools that we're talking about, particularly when you're talking about files? Because when I've gone in and done assessments, I'm like, oh my God, do you know this is not supposed to be in this files? Never the two shall these things meet in particular.
Yeah.
It's scary. It really is scary because there are fines attached to two pieces of paper touching each other in certain ways, right? So what are some of the places that a small business owner can go to get information to find these tools? What would you recommend? Thank you.
I just added a few links that we have at ConsciousHR and with Disrupt State for you. We have a lot of just free information available out there because that's the stuff that you can Google, but you don't know what's the right stuff to do.
Yes.
So I would encourage you, as much as you can remove paper is great. There are some things where you need some physical paperwork, but again, aligning yourself with your favorite payroll company is fantastic because they do a lot of that like paperwork compliance type stuff.
Mhm.
And you'll find out that some of it can be electronic and doesn't need to be physical paperwork. If it is physical, then there becomes very specific requirements about where it is kept, like with
Right.
I-9s, for example. And
Exactly.
I-9s we didn't even get to talk about, and it's hot button topic right now with just what's going on politically. But there's specific spots where you have to keep one piece of it if they're active, if they're not active, even
That's
after they're
right.
terminated, you have to keep them physically on site. So if you can avoid having them physical and just have them stored electronically, that just makes it easier for you. And those are all things that you're not going to know or
Exactly.
understand exist until you do come talk to somebody. So yeah, please don't Google it because you can Google
Okay.
it, but it's
Do
not going
not
to be
chat
correct.
GPT anything because
Oh
it
my
may not give
gosh.
you the correct
Yeah,
information.
yeah.
So,
Well,
But you
it's
know what?
every
That's very scary. It's scary because the information appears to be accurate. It really does. And you build your foundation on misinformation
mhm.
causes the building to fall. It really could cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. So
Yes.
thank you for this, Lindsay. That information is powerful.
I did
Um,
have something, but it won't let me upload it. It's a PDF, so it won't let me do that, but I can certainly send it over and you guys can email it to
that'd
attendee.
be great. We can get it to
Yeah.
Carolyn and get it to Wise.
Okay.
So you guys run amazing practices. How does any of our folk who have attended the Power Hour today reach you?
You can find me. We do a lot of stuff right on Instagram. I'm still on there, even though I shouldn't waste my time on there. But it's conscioushr.co on Instagram. You can go right to our website, conscioushr.co. And actually, one of the links is right here. That links link gives you all of our contact information as well. So we make it super easy to jump on the phone with us, whether you have an initial question about what we're doing as far as services. Our website has a ton of information out there, but I'm always out and about and happy and willing to chat too. So you can reach me at lindsay@conscioushr.co, and it is .co, not .com. So yeah, that's you can find us on all the interwebs or floating in and around Syracuse, New York.
Thank you. Cool beans. And Caprice?
You can reach me at my email at caprice@readerhr.com. I also do have a website, readerhr.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I am going to try to get out there and do some more networking events. It's my
I
goal
love
for
it.
2025.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to come off of mute and ask a question or two, now's the opportunity. I'm playing the Jeopardy song in my head to give you all a minute to do that. We're 1 minute before the hour. Carolyn, is there anything in the chat that we need to take a look at?
No,
We're
you're good.
good. Awesome. So listen, I love the Power Hours. I think that they're amazing conversations that WISE sponsors for the community of business owners that we serve, of course, 7 counties here in Central New York. Caprice and Lindsay, you've been amazing. I'm so glad that we, in the ecosystem of bad women bosses, bad meaning good, women
BWB.
bosses, that we're connected. And I'm really excited that anyone who needs information to start their business off on the right foot and understand that there is power in connectivity, and not just transactional, right? There's power in relationship, there's power in resources, that we can get this right and build good businesses. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Enjoy
Thank
the
you
rest
all.
of your day.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Thanks.